at 6 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. We'll probably have some people joining us a little after, but we can go ahead and jump in. So again, welcome to the attendees who have joined so far. Make sure your audio is working. Hopefully you can hear us okay. And familiarize yourself with the chat box and the question area so that you can type to us, or raise your hand, use that button, and we can unmute your mic so that you can ask questions that way as well. I want to welcome our two wonderful panelists now. We have Mircea and Megan here with us, and I'm going to ask them both to introduce themselves. But just to give you a little overview, so my name is Audrey Flood. I'm a development manager at the Tiffin-Seneca Economic Partnership. Our job in a nutshell is to help businesses with projects and support them in a variety of different ways. One of the ways that we decided to do that during these crazy times are with this series of webinars on many different topics that we thought would be helpful to businesses as a free resource for people to log in and have discussions about. And we've brought in local experts on each of these different areas to try and provide some value and get some questions answered for our local businesses. We've done all kinds of topics from financial resources, marketing and social media, online technology tools for adjusting your business, all kinds of different things. And today's topic is mental health and your business. This is definitely an important topic right now, and it can definitely be a sensitive one and an emotional one. So please feel free to share. And this is, again, a good space. There's no such thing as a stupid question during this time. No one has been prepared for this pandemic. There is no book on this, so no such thing as a stupid question. So, all right, we'll go ahead and let the panelists introduce themselves. Oh, and I forgot to say, this is in partnership with the Seneca Regional Chamber of Commerce as well. So we're happy to have them on board as partners too. Okay, Mircea, you want to start off, introduce yourself and what you do, your organization?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Mircea Handru. I'm the director with the Mental Health and Recovery Service Board. We cover Seneca, Sandusky, and Wyandotte counties. Our role is to help really the local communities link with behavioral health services, whatever is treatment or recovery supports. We don't provide direct services to clients, but again, we link clients and families with agencies in our community or in the region who can assist with mental health and addiction services.
Awesome, thanks, Mircea. Okay, Megan, would you introduce yourself and your work?
Sure. So I wear a number of different hats, and some of the hats that I wear is I'm a professor at Heidelberg University in the Masters of Counseling program. So I teach counselors to be counselors. But the other part of my work is I own a small business. I own a small private practice here in town where I work with clients and their mental health needs. Some of my my specialty areas include trauma and crisis. So I'm a certified trauma practitioner. So a lot of the work I do is working with people who have experienced some sort of traumatic event in their life, which right now it's the first time I've ever lived through it, but it's a universal crisis that people are experiencing, which is a really different time. So those are two of my hats that I wear, and I also have kiddos in the community. So right now we're getting to do school at home.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Megan, for your introduction. Okay, I will let each of the panelists kind of go into some of their tips or resources, but as we're doing that, again, to the attendees, have your questions ready. After I have the two of them kind of give us an overview, we'll go into some dialogue after that with the group. So, Mircea, do you want to start us off with just an overview of kind of the resources that are available or any guidance for our businesses during this crisis?
Probably the most important thing I can share with local businesses is to actually realize that we exist here in the local community. and we are here to assist anybody with any mental health and addiction treatment services. We work with many organizations to make sure that everybody is getting served or receives treatment. I want to make sure everybody understands that you don't have to have necessarily health insurance to receive treatment services from us. We'll see individuals who have very good private insurance to some weak private insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, or some they really don't have anything. And in many cases, we help people who are maybe eligible, let's say for Medicaid, to actually enroll in Medicaid and get those benefits. The agencies we contract with, again, there are many agencies. I don't want to really mention all of them, but one of the agencies will provide a critical service is the 24/7 crisis service. So we have in our local community a crisis hotline that people can call 24/7. It's answered by local individuals. It really is designed for people in crisis. I'll give all those numbers maybe at the end of the webinar. We also have various offices that we work with, Violence Counseling and Recovery Services, Oriana House, and so on, that they all have local office numbers that are usually open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I can share some of that information. One new thing that we developed actually just in the last 2 weeks or so, we actually developed a 24/7 crisis hotline for nurses, healthcare provider, and first responders. We actually received some phone calls from some of the local first responders who need help, navigating through this pandemic. And as Meagan said, many of them struggle with trauma or some things that they really weren't prepared for. So this is a hotline that it's a safe place for them to talk with our local professionals. I will say again that if you are an employer and you have employees that maybe were laid off or employees that you think struggle, you don't have to know all the details to actually have them call us. At the end, I'll give you our office number. We are open 8 to 4:30 Monday to Friday. It's really the number that we call hold hand. We really want to take each case individual and see where they are and plan a whole continuum of services for them. We don't want to give somebody, well, call this number and they're going to do everything for you. No, we don't know that yet. So I encourage people to actually call us first, unless they're in a crisis, but call us first so we can navigate them through the system. Again, it's important to know how we operate. We work with state federal funds and local levy funds. Again, if individuals have no income, especially maybe some of them were laid off, we will not deny services. We will make sure we will link them with services regardless of payer source. We have with all of our contractors providers something that we call sliding fee. So really based on the income that you are making, it's what percentage you will pay. Again, if you have no job, if you make no income now, then expect that we will help those individuals at 100%. We experience often individuals that have private insurance, but maybe have very, very high deductible. And again, we can make exceptions there to help those individuals. So we are a very small office. We are located in Tiffin, Ohio. It's best to call us. Again, we'll hold everybody's hand to make sure they are linked. The last thing I would like to mention is telehealth. Most of our agencies we contract with, because of this pandemic, because individuals maybe don't want to leave their home or they are concerned leaving their home. Sometimes even our counselors are concerned about seeing people face to face. We implemented telehealth. So, if you call any of our numbers, you don't want to see somebody face to face. We do have the ability to make sure we link you with somebody through telehealth, whatever it's a call or a webinar or a different software product that we might use. We will be able to link individuals to these services. I also would like to mention that, obviously as a board, one of our concerns now, it might not impact the local employers, but our behavioral health agencies are also local employers. And as maybe you read the news, in some of the locations in the region, unfortunately, we had behavioral health agencies that had their own therapists who tested positive for COVID-19. So now we are trying again to make to assist them and make as many exceptions as we can. So our therapists that we contract with or agencies can actually work from home. So it's kind of, I think things are changing very rapidly even now. So again, I encourage people to call our office, and again, I can give that number at the end. Things are changing very rapidly, so we don't know how this will progress, and maybe what will be 30 days from now.
Yeah, thank you, Mircea. There's some really helpful resources and information in there. I think your point about payment and insurance right now during this specific crisis is really important. So hopefully that helps all of our businesses feel comfortable reaching out, maybe no matter what their circumstances right now. All right, Megan, do you want to give us kind of an overview of some tips or tricks that you have for people to cope during this time?
Yeah, so I'm gonna shift our gears a little bit. If people will go with me to like my geeky side for a second, I really want to acknowledge and highlight the fact that people who are business owners historically already have heightened levels of stress, heightened weights, heightened stressors, really different components that they grapple with. So there are so many pieces to being a business owner that are really different than maybe people who aren't business owners experience. Not to dismiss either, but I want to highlight that the stressors there are different and the weights there are different. Whether that is the provider for a family or the provider for numerous employees and their livelihoods, and all of the pieces that go with that. And so when you start to look at those pieces that are already there, historically, business owners have really different mental health needs, and they're really busy. So those mental health needs don't always have space to be attended to. And we know societally that there's just a lot of stigma with mental health. So when you take this really hardworking group of people who already have extra stressors, and then you add a crisis, which what this is, it's a universal crisis. I talked about that earlier, but a lot of times people are like, well, this isn't a crisis or this doesn't count as a trauma. But it's important to note that any time that your foundation, so that foundation that you reside on, that security and that safety, those pieces, when those are shaken, when those are removed, when those are in question, then you're hitting that space of crisis or trauma, because then you're in a state of dysregulation, because those foundational pieces that keep the rest of your pieces up, right? If you think of like the foundation of a house, when that is shaken, you're dysregulated. Sleep is different, eating is different, your thought processes are different, your stressors are heightened, your anxiety is heightened. All of these pieces now shift. And if there's other components besides just business, like you're now trying to navigate life with your kids, or your partner or spouse also has difficulties, or someone's an essential worker, you start adding all of these. Oh, it's so heavy. It's so heavy. And so I want to honor that space, and I want to highlight that this is just a really scary, uncertain, dysregulated time. And Audrey, I think you said it, like, we don't have a book for this. There's no instruction manual on how to handle this type of crisis. And even as we build it, the guideposts move, right? Because even our leaders who are trying to navigate it and trying to work within this moving crisis, I guess, they also don't have instruction manuals. So the first place that I want to start is honoring that, discussing that the weights and the stressors for business owners are already different. And then there's another piece where we've added, which is that isolation. So if you think about like a typical day or a typical week for a business owner or someone in a community, you come into contact with people all day long, and you work with partnerships and with task forces and with coalitions, and there's so much collaboration, and there's trading of goods and services, and there's constant interaction. And what we know about how people operate, what we know about how other traumas are healed, other crisis times are remedied, is through this. We help to re-regulate through relationships, through connection, through community. And so that piece is also shifted right now. So if you are feeling just awful, or if you're feeling super anxious, or you are feeling like not yourself, I want to point out that that's normal, and that's okay, because that is a typical reaction in an abnormal time. So we have all these moving parts, and so the words that I've been using a lot, I've been using these two words a lot, are space and grace. Everybody needs space to be able to navigate this, because everybody is having to change something. There is no part of our communities or our lives that is not touched by this. So allowing space for yourself, allowing space for the business to breathe, allowing space for your employees to say that they're scared, or that this system isn't working, or they haven't heard stuff back, allowing space, because we don't have great answers. And the other one is grace. So having grace with yourself. A lot of times our business owners are our overachievers. They were the ones who were like, you know what? I can do this. I can take on these weights. I can navigate all of these pieces. And a lot of times there's some perfectionist tendencies, and there's an enormous work ethic. And now we're shifting all of these pieces. Have grace with yourself if it's not perfect. Have grace with your employees if they are stressed out messes. Have grace with your partners or spouses if they don't know the right thing to say, because what can somebody say right now? So space and grace are the two places I keep pointing people towards. And the other piece is that this one's hard, and give me a second because I'll get there. I work with a lot of people on like their anxieties or their perceptions, or like, hey, maybe we could see this a different way. This isn't one of those times. Like, your fears and your worries are rational right now. Like, you're not in an irrational state. So the part that I want to tell you right now is that it is time to adapt to a temporary normal. So we don't want to remove the hope. We don't want to remove the forward thinking, because that doesn't do us any good. But it is important to find a new normal. This isn't going to be forever. We're not going to be in this for years, but we are going to be in it for a while. So how do we adapt as best we can with flexibility to a new normal? So space and grace, and adapting to a new normal. Those are my big pieces right now. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you, Megan. Okay, we don't have any questions yet from the attendees. So I'm going to go ahead and ask a question. Some things we've kind of been hearing from businesses at our office. What is the best way for a small business owner, if they have employees or if they have a team, however small it might be, that they work with? What is the best way for them to kind of check in on their employees, or, you know, like you said, provide this space and grace to their employees? What resources are available that they could, you know, offer to their employees to let them know that they're there for them, and that they understand, you know, that their employees might have mental health needs during this time too. So Megan, I think you'll have some really good tips on that. Mircea, I wanted to check if you had any resources you would point business owners to in order to kind of reach out to their employees during this time before we go to Megan.
Sure. I would encourage that we work with individual employers. Some of the resources can just be something that we develop or maybe already have developed that can be passed out to each employees. Actually, when we were during the highest peak of our opioid crisis, we actually work with many local employees where we put information when they, for example, when they receive the pay stubs. So we work with many employers again to make sure this goes to all the employees, this critical information, whatever was maybe just a few tips about what to do during this time, or maybe some educational material, or maybe some local phone numbers that they can outreach to. So we can definitely do that as well with local employers about, during and post COVID-19. The second thing I will say again is we have a lot of resources already on our website. So if they go on the Mental Health Recovery Service Board, they might be able to pull some information from there. Also, it is not abnormal for us to actually go to some of the local businesses and provide little groups or little seminars face to face. We actually went to some employers in the past where we met with them during their lunch break. It was a factory or something. So, or prior to their shift. So I would say that if local employers want to take advantage of that, we can provide those services at no cost to any Seneca County employer.
Awesome. Thank you, Mircea. Meagan, do you have thoughts on what the best way for an employee as a as a manager or as a boss to reach out to their employees to help them during this crisis?
Yeah, so there's no like magic thing that you can say, right? Like, unless you can swoop in with jobs back intact as they were, or with magical amounts of money, or extra time in the day, which are things we just don't have. There's no magic wand. But the most important thing that you can do with your employees is letting them know that you care, letting them know that it's okay that they're frustrated or scared, or angry, that all those emotions are okay. I point lots of people to Mircea's direction. So I give lots of people the website, but I also give lots of people the crisis text line. The text line I really love. It's 741-741. You can text it 24 hours a day, and someone will respond and help you work through it. Mircea actually has a few graphics on his website that I share a ton. But for employers, one, you need to make sure you have capacity to hold somebody else's stuff. Because when I say make space, what I envision is like a phone call, a text, a meeting if y'all are meeting in person, a Zoom, whatever that is, like, hey, I know things aren't okay, but I want you to know I'm here. A lot of times we tend to universally like, hey, how's it going? And we go, good, okay, fine, right? We give that. And it's okay to say, I know it's not. I know you're not okay. Is there anything you want to talk about? And if you don't want to talk to me about it, here's Mircea's info. Here's the text line. Here are some resources. The other piece of that is, like, if you're not in an okay place to carry your employees' stuff, that's understandable. Let them know, I'm not okay. I know y'all aren't okay. Here's some resources. And that's okay, because it's a lot to carry. And that's why you'll have so many different weights, is because you are an employer and you are a business owner, whether that's your own responsibilities or responsible for all of your people. But the other piece is a lot of agencies, whether they're community agencies that take insurance or they're private, they'll work with you on fees. So if you call and you let them know, pretty much all people ethically have a responsibility to work with you, but also they want to. So give them a call, and if they can't help, they'll point you in a direction of who can, or reach out to Mircea, and he'll know all of those pieces. He knows all the people who will work with you. But the cool thing about mental health workers, social workers, all of those pieces is that they're trained to operate in crisis. They're trained to be a calm in a crisis. And so even as we're adapting and changing our entire businesses, we are happy to be resources to our community and to the people in them, and to reinforce that, like, all the things you're feeling are totally okay and totally normal.
Yeah, thanks, Meagan.
I would like to give one example as well of, working with some just previous experience with some of the local businesses. Everything behavioral health is normal. I don't want employers to think that, well, this person got to be in crisis before I refer them to an agency or to the board. Just in the last, actually, just prior to COVID-19, I actually had a grandma who called, who was working as a cook at one of the local restaurants. And it was just as simple as, how do I talk with my grandchild about sex? and how do I handle these things, or what is the best manual or book I can purchase for him that maybe he feels comfortable to read about it. And by the way, these are some issues that maybe he experienced at school. Who is the best person to talk to at the school, or how should I handle this? So some of these things don't have to be like major crises for us to talk with the family. So just keep that in mind. Also, we had individuals who maybe came to us to say, hey, I'm concerned about so-and-so because they lost their son in a car accident, and I'm concerned about them, and can somebody outreach to them? I'm trying to point them in the right direction, but I don't know which direction is that. So everything, again, that's behavioral health related, I will encourage people to outreach to us or any local agency. We work very closely with all of them, so we know the local system.
Yeah, awesome. Great points. Thank you, Mircea. Mircea also just put the phone numbers, the crisis text line, and the website in the chat. For those of you who are looking at the chat, make sure you copy and paste those numbers down and that website as well. And we can go back to that at the end before we leave too. Okay, yeah, this is really great information so far. I think our businesses will hopefully find this very helpful. Let's see. I wanted to touch on something. Well, first of all, maybe just a quick tip for any of our community business leaders. Do you guys, either of you, have any good tools for just kind of calming if we find ourselves in a moment where we're very anxious and, you know, having, like you said, a very heavy moment or very concerned about something? Any good tools to just, you know, take a moment and, you know, calm down? Any of your favorite tricks for that, either of you?
I have lots. Richard, do you have something you want to share? Because I could go for a while.
I will just go through one really fast, but what works for me, it's actually outreach to people that you trust, and outreach to people that you truly believe care about you. It's nice to be able to open up to somebody you trust, to get some feedback, maybe try to hear somebody else's opinion or advice about something. As Megan mentioned, I think we human beings, they would like to connect with other human beings. Now, we might not be able to connect face to face as we used to, but, you know, through the phone or all the social media, I think we can. So, talk to people about your concerns. I think it's important for people to open up to people who they trust.
Yeah, thank you. Megan?
Yeah, so if you think about, like, at some point in your life, you have taken like a bottle of like Coke or Sprite or whatever, and you dropped it on the ground, right? And you know what happens when you open that, right? It just makes a huge mess. It explodes everywhere. Everything is sticky, and you're trying to like contain it again. So we're kind of like that. We each have our things that shake us up, right? So we're just a chill Coke bottle going throughout the day, but things will shake us up. Crappy customers, or, you know, employees not showing up, or just normal day-to-day things will shake us up. And usually you crack that a little bit, right? You crack that up because we know if you just open it, it's going to explode. Or if you keep shaking it without opening it ever, it explodes. So usually, like in a day-to-day, we'll vent to a friend or a partner, kind of like Mircea talked about, or you'll go for a walk, or you'll get out of the office and you'll go, you know, run an errand. You kind of do those things. Right now, kind of consider like your Coke bottle on like a slow, steady shake just all the time. So not leaving it, like don't just let it keep building up, because we tend to then explode in places that we don't intend, and we can harm others, or we pop off on a friend or a loved one. So a lot of things right now include like step outside. We're seeing a huge reduction in the amount that people are going outside because we have stay-at-home orders, but also because you're trying to navigate so many details. Walk outside and breathe. Nothing is going to get any better in the next 3 minutes. Nothing's going to change dramatically. So walk outside, you're changing your environment, you're getting fresh air, you're seeing the sun or some clouds. So walk outside, remove yourself from the situation. The way I teach breathing to my kiddos is think of your favorite smell If it is grandma's cookies, if it is cinnamon, if it is something printing fast off the press and you love that smell, think of your favorite smell and the way you breathe it in, and then blow out a birthday candle. So breathing all the way into your belly and all the way out of your mouth. The reason I say that is when we're angry or when we're frustrated, we tend to take shorter breaths, which increases our heart rate and increases our blood pressure. You want to reduce that, which then allows you to start having clearer thoughts. Because when we're frustrated or angry, our thoughts go into tunnel vision. So walk outside, take deep breaths, scream, yell into a pillow, do car screaming, whatever it is you need to do, again, to release. If you're one of those ones that likes to pop off and hit things, punch a pillow because you don't want to hurt yourself or property. But letting it out, releasing that Coke bottle valve just a little at a time. You might not have hours to just Netflix, right? You might not have that luxury right now. But what are those small moments that you can take? Take a minute. One thing that we like to do is we like to talk about grounding. A quick way you can do that is looking around you. What are 5 things you can see? What are 4 things you can hear? You do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you go through your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you touch? What do you taste? What do you smell? The reason you do that is because, again, it'll open up that vision so you can see again. It brings your heart rate down, and all of a sudden you're not focusing on all of those things like a pinball machine in your head, right? So you do these pieces, it helps you to de-escalate, you can breathe, and then you can start thinking clear. Because, you know, when you're heightened, you're not thinking clear. So giving yourself a moment to take a break, whether that's breathing, walking outside, talking to a loved one, doing a quick sensory grounding. It's kind of like the jolt you need to be able to breathe again and think clear. But let it out. Let that Coke bottle out a little bit at a time to help from having really big explosions.
Those are some great tips. Thank you, Megan. I know I could definitely use some of those, so hopefully everyone who sees this can too. Okay, so that was a little bit about how to kind of deal with our mental health in the moment. I would like to take a minute to talk about a little bit of a heavier subject. We know that these times are very, very pressing for a lot of people, but especially business owners. If we or someone we know seems to be experiencing suicidal thoughts, you know, or expressing concerns about suicide, where, if it's us, where should we call? If it's someone we know, where should we refer them to? What is kind of the best practices as far as kind of worst case scenario of the topic of suicide? Let's see, Mircea, you can start. Yeah.
So let's assume right now somebody has suicidal thoughts, or we believe that one of our friends or family members or employees, in this case, they are suicidal. I think you should identify them by actually asking the question. Asking somebody the question, hey, are you thinking about ending your life? It will not make that person actually more suicidal than what it already is. So I want to make sure people understand that. But if that happens and you truly believe that one of your employees is at imminent risk of suicide, you have 2 options. One is you call the 1-800 number that I listed. That's a 24/7 crisis hotline. That licensed therapist is going to guide you, kind of do a phone interview with that person and kind of identify where they are, kind of like a phone assessment almost. The second thing that is really important and really is the option is you have to either take them to the local emergency room where one of our therapists will go and evaluate them face to face, or if it's actually during regular hours, you can take them to finance counseling and recovery services to their office, and they will be evaluated then. When somebody is evaluated, kind of expect 2 other things to happen, just to keep it simple. One, that person can be evaluated and be released home or to their family care with a plan. That plan might be, hey, tomorrow you got to come back, you got to see our physician or you got to see our therapist, and we work with you through mental health services. Or the second thing can happen is that person might be hospitalized. If we believe that that person has imminent risk to suicide or homicide, that person will be hospitalized. So this is really the most challenging or difficult or uneasy service we monitor, but really those are the options. If you truly believe somebody can be suicidal, please ask the question. Ask the questions, try to engage with them, and if needed, take them to either finance office if it's during regular hours or to the local emergency room.
Thanks, Mircea. Yeah, Megan, what thoughts do you have on this?
Yeah, so clearly the same processes that Mircea talked about, but I also want to, I'm gonna remove one weight. You don't have to investigate. Like, if you're worried, just ask, or if you're worried, give them resources, because we don't know what people are experiencing, and when you feel trapped or you feel hopeless or it just feels too heavy, we don't know what else they're battling. So you don't have to be the investigator. Don't try to go like, oh, I think they are, or maybe they're not. Just ask, because as soon as you ask, the myth that Mircea talked about is that if you ask, they're going to think about it. Actually, when you ask people, what we know is that they feel seen. They feel seen and heard and supported and cared about. So ask and then say, hey, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you feeling suicidal? If you are, here are some resources. And even if you're not, here's some resources. Like, just let them know that those are there. But also know that if you're having those thoughts, if you're feeling hopeless, that's understandable. And those resources are also there for you. It's not a weakness. It's not there's something wrong with you. It's just a really hard time, and we don't have answers, and ambiguity is terrifying. So there are resources, there are people who care, there are people who want to help, and you're not alone in this battle, in this crisis. But even when we're not in crisis, you're not alone, and there's people who want to help.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Really good advice there. We know these are tough subjects, but it's good to get the resources and information out there. Okay, so just a reminder to the attendees, I don't see any questions yet or any hands raised, but feel free again to either put those in the chat, submit a question, or raise your hand and we can have you over the mic. Or if you have anything to add to the discussion as well, we'd love to hear from you. So again, just raise your hand and we can put you on the mic. Another question that has kind of come up for us in our office when we're talking about other business owners that people are seeing and connecting with in the community. We talked a little bit about kind of navigating this system. I guess the question is, if someone might not be, severely suicidal or anything like that, tips for how to encourage someone who might just be, struggling to reach out, and how to have them, is the best thing to call the board, and they can explore what therapists or counselors are kind of available. And right now, during this time, we know that a lot of this will be over telemedicine, as one of you mentioned as well, and not in person. So does that kind of complicate things, and how do we sort of guide someone who we see who might be struggling, but definitely not to the point of, worrying about harming themselves, but just kind of guiding them to a resource and making them feel comfortable? I guess I kind of slid these questions together, but I did want to ask your thoughts on the telemedicine versus in person. How do we make someone feel comfortable with something that might feel a little strange, talking to a counselor over a screen? That might not be something that people would immediately feel comfortable with. So again, just kind of navigating that system for the current time of how do we guide someone to get to a point where they are face to face with a counselor that they can talk to, if we feel that we need to try to connect someone that way. Megan, I'll let you start on this one. What thoughts do you have on this?
Sure. So I'm start with the telehealth, the telemedicine one, which of course is just a hot topic in my life right now, between my students who are now doing their clinical rotation via telemedicine, my own clients, we've all transitioned to telemedicine. It sounds weird, and it sounds like, how can we establish rapport? How can I trust you? What does it look like? let me show you. Let me show you. And the whole thing is like in counseling, there's just nothing you can't ask, and there's nothing that is off limits. And so if you want to be like, where are you, and what's around you? How do I know it's confidential? Let me answer. Let me explain those pieces, but also let's try it out. Because like anything that's new, it feels scary or uncomfortable at first. But let us show you. And here's my next piece. Like if the first time you do it, you don't feel like you get a good connection with your counselor, or you just don't feel like you're a match, similar to going to any other doctor, you don't just quit going to the knee doctor because you don't like them, or either you didn't think that they were a good vibe for you. Find another one. Find one until you're comfortable, because that relationship matters a ton. It's definitely different, but I will say of my clients, they've all except for a few have transitioned to telehealth, and I would say all but 3 of like my 30-ish clients really like it. They like some of the conveniences. It removes a lot of barriers. A lot of them don't have to, get gussied up to go outside, but they can do it from their home and they feel safe, and so it removes some of those fears. So reach out and ask questions about it. Anybody that you call, any provider, is going to want to walk you through what it looks like, what the process is, how to know it's secure and HIPAA compliant and your confidentiality is protected. And all of us are doing those. So let us show you, and let us work through some of those bugs with you, or some of those things that are rubbing, because we want to fix it and we want to address it as best we can. Did that answer the one about telemedicine?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I will say that for like generationally, I definitely see differences for like those who are in like their mid-30s and younger. This is so normal for them because of Snapchat, FaceTime, all of the things. And then I would say those who are like my mom or dad's age, they also really like it because they've been FaceTiming or Snapchatting or Skyping with their grandkids for years. So we've got like this in between where I see more like barriers or just discomfort, but it doesn't usually take too long. It doesn't usually take too long before we find our rhythm and we get there.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, Mircea, any tips on those topics? Either the kind of adjusted normal of telehealth for mental health right now, or guidance on how to make others around us feel more comfortable with reaching out during this time.
First, I want to make sure individuals understand, and employers or people calling, that all of our services, we are very strict regarding confidentiality. So whatever you talk to me during the office, your information will not be shared. I also want to make sure individuals understand that our contracted providers right now, they are all continuing to provide face-to-face as well. So telehealth is just another option. If somebody needs services tomorrow and they want their service to happen face-to-face, it will happen face-to-face in Tiffin, Ohio tomorrow. So we do telehealth. For us is just another option that we are now expanding on or try to enhance. And one thing that I would like to highlight that's actually, I don't see this being discussed too often, is in most of our services now, we implemented what's called peer support services. So with Firelands, for example, we have a lot of mental health peers, so people who are in the system themselves, or people who receive services themselves, and now they are doing so much better. And sometimes we use them to outreach or to be a peer for somebody trying to link with services. You can ask a peer a lot of questions that maybe you don't ask your therapist, like, what should I expect? What is the next step? And often these peers, sometimes they even go to people's homes, or we use them kind of like case managers, or try to meet with them and get a coffee and try to navigate them through the system. So now we implemented peer services in all of our mental health and addiction services here in our local community.
Great, thank you, Mircea. That's great to know that there is still a face-to-face option for people who prefer that. So thank you. I guess before we go into kind of our closing thoughts and wrapping up and going into, contact information, wanted to see if either of you had any topics related to mental health for our businesses, our business owners and individuals in the business community that maybe we haven't covered yet that you think that we should talk about. So is there anything that I haven't asked, any questions that haven't been brought to me that either of you think we should go into?
So in looking at my notes, one piece that I thought of, pretty universally, folks are struggling, and there is, this universal crisis that's happening. But some businesses, depending on the needs, depending on what their services are okay. And if you are feeling guilt because you are okay, breathe that in and breathe that out, and then just see who you can stand beside as a support. It's not your fault that your business or your service is not impacted. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything. It just means that in the roulette game we're playing right now, that your color was a solid color and number right now. But remove that guilt and just see who you can stand by and who you can support. I'm thrilled that things are going okay on your end. So then how can you help someone where it might not be?
Yeah, great point, Megan. Mircea, anything that we didn't cover that you think is important for us to talk about?
I think it's important for employers to keep behavioral health in the back of their mind, not just maybe now through the emergency, but I really think that this COVID-19 will impact individuals' behavioral health needs for a long period of time. I think that we are seeing a trend now in increase of overdoses and suicide attempts in the last 2 weeks. And we can't really say, well, this is COVID-19 related. It's kind of a little early to say that, but we are preparing for the long haul. So expect that some individuals will struggle with this maybe long before all these restrictions are lifted. So it's nice to know that employers care about mental health and addiction services. Please keep in mind that we are here. We are a local agency. Calling somebody down in Washington D.C. You can talk with local individuals, and just like you, we are a locals business and we have employees ourselves. So we kind of all in this together, I guess.
Hey, Audrey, I want to make a point. Mircea brought up a really, really important piece that I would be remiss if we got off without saying. Mircea talked about how this is going to impact mental health and behavioral health for a long time. The other piece is that the way crisis and trauma works, it's really unfair. But if you think about like earthquake plates, they're not isolated things. So like the car accident that you had when you were 16 or an employee had when they were 16, and now this crisis, they're not separate siloed things. They actually rub on each other. So if all of a sudden as you're going through this, you start realizing that you're thinking about, or you hear an employee talking about stuff that was years ago, or that you thought you were through, or they thought they were through, like that's really normal because that dysregulation rubs on dysregulation. And we're going to be in this space for a while. So be mindful of how you're feeling and be mindful of the things you hear them say, and just know that time right now looks different. So it rubs on stuff from the past. And sometimes there's a latency to when you feel the stressors of this. You might be in a survival mode and this might not hit you until a little ways down. That's normal. So time is pretty abstract right now. So just keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah, great point. Thanks, Megan. Okay, one last chance to throw out to either raise your hand or type a question in as we're kind of wrapping up here, and we'd be happy to get those answered for our attendees. So I want to give each of you the opportunity to share the best contact info that people can write down to share for themselves or to share with their employees or other business owners for reaching out about questions or to get help or to connect someone else with help. So Megan, what is the best way that people could reach out to you to find more information?
Sure. The best one is my office email, which is Meagan, MEAGAN, at mkcac.com. And I put that in the chat, I think, to you, Audrey. My business is MK Counseling and Consulting, and I'm happy to answer questions or see if there's things that I can help brainstorm or find resources for you.
Awesome, thank you. And Mircea, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you or the board? Your numbers are in the chat, so people can refer to the chat box, but in case they can't see them, or for our listeners as well, how should people best get in contact with the board?
So our office for a non-emergency situation will be 419-448-0640. If you do have a crisis or somebody has a crisis or an emergency, the 24/7 number is 1-800-826-1306. And if you just want to look for a lot of resources that I don't want to overwhelm you with now, or you can find a text line, or really we have brochures with all kinds of resources on our website. Our website is mhrsbssw.org, stands for Mental Health Recovery Services Board, Seneca, Sandusky, Wyandotte.org. Again, you'll find lots of information there if you just want to look through. But again, I really encourage, if you just unsure maybe even what you want, to call our office, and you have a 25% chance I'm going to pick up the phone.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And if after this, anyone has any questions on other business related topics, I'm happy to help or to connect you with either of these two. You can reach me at our office. My last name, Flood, F-L-O-O-D, at Tiffin-Seneca.org, or my phone, 419-561-0244, and happy to walk through or connect you to resources on any other business related topics. And if it's mental health related, I will point you towards these two. So yeah, I just wanted to thank all of our attendees for joining, and I wanted to thank Mircea and Meagan so much for taking the time this evening to talk with us and to provide all of their resources and tips and tools for us. I know that all of our local businesses really appreciate this. And so do either of you have any closing thoughts in parting to end things for us?
No, just thank you for the opportunity and for bringing this to the forefront. I think it's really important right now and always. But.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys. As they said, we are all in this together, so please don't hesitate to reach out. And just an ending note to go to our website at senecaSuccess.com, or just search us on Facebook, Tiffin-Seneca Economic Partnership. And you can find webinars on a various range of different topics, everything from financial to marketing, social media, health and sanitation, all kinds of different topics. If you're wondering or looking for some local experts to guide you on any of those topics, those resources are available on our Facebook page and on our website. And so we look forward to connecting with all of you later, and good luck. And thank you so much for everyone for their time tonight, and for our panelists especially. So thank you all. Go ahead and end now. Have a great night.